says its forces destroyed multiple Iranian naval vessels, including 16 mine layers in the Strait of Hormuz. Sources familiar with U.S. intelligence say that Tehran is laying mines in the strait, which serve as a globally vital oil and shipping lane. President Trump is not happy about that. Back in the U.S., top Republicans trying to downplay concerns around rising gas prices amid the war.
The mission is being achieved, is nearly completed, and the commander-in-chief himself said in the last 24 hours it will come to a close. So gas prices will readjust after that. You know, most of this is because the Strait of Hormuz has been closed by the regime down there, but it will be reopened, and it will take a couple of weeks, but gas prices will come back down. This is a temporary blip in an extraordinary trend of return to American energy dominance.
So Speaker Johnson there used the word temporary, but the Trump administration is not giving a definitive deadline of when that war will end.
Ultimately, the operations will end when the commander-in-chief determines the military objectives have been met, fully realized, and that Iran is in a position of complete and unconditional surrender, whether they say it or not.
On Capitol Hill, Democrats are demanding transparency from the Trump administration. The Pentagon says around 140 U.S. service members have been injured since the start of Operation Epic Fury. Here's what key Senate Democrats had to say after a classified briefing.
I know a lot I can't share with you, and I can't share with my constituents who want to know if their kids or spouses are going to be deployed and for how long. We want to drag this into the open and ask questions in front of the American public, and that's what we're asking for. We think this war is illegal. We think it's unwise. American troops are being injured. More than 100 injured, 7 died.
If he does want to put us in a forever war, which it seems like he does, he needs to come out and let us be able to have this discussion, or take that gag order off us that they put on because we're in the
Iran has begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Sources tell CNN that mining is not very extensive yet, but they warn that Tehran still has the vast majority of its small boats and mine layers, and Iranian forces could feasibly lay hundreds of mines in that waterway. Now, the strait is the world's most important energy choke point, carrying about a fifth of the global crude oil supply during typical operations. President Trump says that if Iran put out any mines in the strait, he wants them removed immediately. He warns that Iran could face consequences at a level never seen before. U.S. Central Command says the military has destroyed multiple Iranian naval ships, including 16 mine layers near that strait. Millions of barrels of crude oil and refined fuels are now effectively stranded in the Gulf with no alternative to shipping through Hormuz. And the uncertainty around that vital waterway is having a major impact on global economies and trade. CNN's Richard Quest has the story from London.
The geography is extremely well known and understood, and that's because of that the risks currently being faced are so severe. Take, for example, Maersk Shipping, which has got at least 10 ships that it says stranded in the northern part of the Strait of Hormuz, and many more on the outside that it can't get in or out because obviously the waterway is so difficult. In addition, they are refusing to send now ships up through into the Red Sea because of the possibilities of the Houthis and the risks around Yemen. As a result, something like Maersk is saying the current situation is absolutely uncharted and unprecedented.
Some of the hubs on which global trade does rely on are actually being affected, are being closed by the situation right now. It's true from Jebel Ali, it's true for Abu Dhabi, it's true for a few of those hubs, and this is going to create a ripple effect, I think, for a while, as we need to see how this is going to sort itself out. In the short run, we can manage this, but if this was to endure, this would create, I think, serious congestions and serious issues across the global supply chain.
What happens next is anybody's guess. The very idea that this area is being mined by the Iranians, or indeed that the US is going in and starting to attack those various rubber dinghies and ships that's doing the mines, it's simply unheard of, and frankly, we don't know how it will develop. The only thing we can say with any degree of certainty is that as long as that waterway remains closed, then the price of oil just keeps rising. Richard West, CNN, London.
Richard with red dollar signs is not a good thing. CNN's Mike Valerio joins me from Beijing with more, hopefully bringing us better news. Mike?
Well, I'm not sure if it's better, but it's deeper reporting into what exactly is happening with the Strait of Hormuz. I'm sorry I can't be the bearer of great news, but it is key to understand what is happening with mine clearing. So we're sharing this reporting with Brad Lendon, who's our senior global military affairs reporter, who filed this story in Japan out of the Beijing bureau where we're coming from right now. We just spoke with our naval expert, Carl Schuster. We want to put up on the screen pictures that we think you should see. These are the former ships that were tasked with mine clearing, that were decommissioned in September and were taken out of Bahrain, towed on this ship. You see the 4 Avenger-class mine countermeasures ship right there, put on that red ship and sent out for scrapping. So the headline that now is on CNN.com is that, Alex, there's a different class of ship that is being tasked with potentially removing mines that Iran puts in the Strait of Hormuz. And this class of ship, littoral combat ships, littoral combat ships, I should say, littoral meaning by the coast rather than deep ocean waters, they have a checkered history of maintenance and engineering issues. These are not exactly new ships that are entering the equation. They first entered service in the late 2000s. But with littoral combat ships, they were meant to do a suite of different things, from anti-submarine warfare, a whole host of other defensive capabilities, and the only engineering tests that they were able to pass were clearing mines, which is now what they're asked to do, and surface warfare. So the architecture of the ship was essentially made before these design mechanisms were finalized. So what we're trying to convey here is that there's this new kind of ship that is entering the theater before hostilities started. Our CNN radar tracking was able to find 3 littoral combat ships in the Persian Gulf region, again, just before the conflict started. So now the question arises, when this huge task is before the U.S. Navy, we have a class of ship that has not been tested in this way before. But the good news is that its counter-mining module, it's called, was the first module to pass all of its engineering tests, tests that, measure what the ship is capable of doing. But, when I was speaking, wrapping up here, with our naval warfare expert, retired Navy Captain Carl Schuster, who's based out of Honolulu, he was saying, Alex, and wanted to convey to our viewers, that the stakes are incredibly high here. There are no perfect decisions that the Navy can make, but it only takes one mine to explode to cause chaos with the psychological damage done by Iran. So what these ships need to do, they need to be quiet. They need to have a minimal magnetic signature. These littoral combat ships that we're talking about, which replace the 4 on your screen, they are equipped with unmanned vehicles that go underneath the water to take out and disable mines. So the point is, it's a lot that's resting on the capabilities of these ships with a checkered record in terms of their engineering and capabilities, Alex.
Yeah, Mike, we've seen some back and forth launches on both sides. Strikes in Iran missiles towards multiple Gulf countries. What do we know about that?
So Iran, the IRGC, is saying that it's launched its Karamshar missile, which is a very powerful long-range ballistic missile. And, if you're getting your missiles confused at home, I know there are a lot of them, but with the Karamshar, this is one that can handle a heavy payload, which means a bigger warhead causing a bigger explosion. But, we were seeing images like you showed at the top of the show of the airport in Tehran being struck. In fact, our own Jeremy Diamond and Aaron Burnett in Tel Aviv had to take cover with the back and forth. They reported on the air in the 7 o'clock Eastern hour at least 2 loud explosions that they could hear in the stairwell. So Iran, the IRGC, is saying this is their biggest attack yet. A quick snippet of their statement, mirroring language, Alex, that the President of the United States is using, is that they're going to take this through until the, quote, enemy's complete surrender. So when we hear language about this thing theoretically wrapping up or no time frame now, which is Christine Holmes, our senior White House reporters reporting tonight, you know, it's both sides that are mirroring each other's language, and this is not ending soon, Alex.
Mike Valerio in Beijing, thank you for that live reporting. Let's go to another part of the world now and bring in retired U.S. Army Major General Mark McCarley, live from Armenia to discuss. Thanks so much for being with us. Thank you for your service to our country. First off, when we're talking about these mines, what are they capable of doing, and why is President Trump so concerned about them?
Those mines are significant tools for degrading the ability of the world maritime ships to pass through the Straits of Hormuz. As we all know, the strait at its narrowest point is about 20 to 24 miles apart. That creates a choke point. It forces those ships to carefully navigate. Those ships must avoid the mines, but the mines themselves, the placement of the mines, create a challenge for the ship operators. If those mines literally funnel those ships into a very small vector, and as a result of that, there is potential for impact between those maritime oil tankers and the mines, and the devastation that results, and the significant potential for blockage of parts of the Straits of Hormuz if 2 or 3 of those huge tankers are in fact taken out.
And so if that happens, what happens to the world's oil supply?
That's a quick and easy answer. I think, as many of your contributors have discussed over the last few days, it significantly shuts down 20%, approximately 20%, and perhaps more, of the petroleum supplies. Not only the petroleum, but the LPG, NPG, and significantly would impact the economies of most of the world.
So President Trump said, if you mess with these mines, we'll come at you far worse than we have before. What could the U.S. do that they haven't been doing? What does he mean by that?
I suspect, because I don't have the targeting plans, nor do any of us who are outside of the Pentagon at this particular point, but it would just mean a continued crescendo of our own ballistic missile systems and aircraft attack platforms striking additional targets within Iran, in a sense pummeling Iran, with the expectation that at some point the leadership of Iran, which now with Muqtada is changed, will come to its quote senses, begin the discussions that could lead to what the president has addressed as unconditional surrender. That's the thinking process. Now, whether that materializes, and there's a lot of discussion about the history of using the term unconditional surrender, nobody knows.
Yeah. So you are in Armenia. What's happening there? How do people there feel about what's going on right next door in Iran?
You are right, and that's the important part. Armenia's southern border is contiguous. It shares that border with Iran, and there have been long-standing, cordial relationships between Armenia and Iran. And for the record, one of the significant access points for Iran leads straight through north-south from the north of Armenia through what we call this border town, Megri, and that is a conduit for equipment, for anything that can be transported by vehicle. The last time I was down there, just a month or so ago, and I should be down there later this week, I saw backup of transport vehicles 5 miles or so. I saw it on the Armenian side, and I was able to peer across the border into the Iranian side. And while I couldn't do a mathematical calculation of the distance, in that same direction, the Iranians are running their trucks through that border into Armenia.
So who's Armenia supporting?
so challenging. Armenia is a country, a wonderful country. It is small. It does not have significant military capability, and for its own survival, it tries to maintain cordial relationships with most of its neighbors, including Iran and sometimes Russia, which Russia even now has significant investment and military facilities in Armenia. So this is a significant platform. We want to maintain observation of what takes place in Armenia. As I've discussed, we can look, at least to some degree, into Iraq from here.
Yeah, and of course, so many Armenians live here in America, including in the city of Glendale, about 5 minutes from where our studio is, which has more Armenians than any other place outside of Armenia. And many of them watching
You're so
us
right
now.
That's
Yes. Thank you very much for joining us, General Mark McCarley.